Ow!
Greetings YouTube, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and welcome to another movie review. Yes, I know it's been a while since I'd last done one of these. This one, of course, is of a movie that I had really been jonesing to see since I heard it was coming out. And of course that is a 2017 version of Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson. Now, when I do this review, this first part is going to be spoiler free, and then I'll go ahead and let you know when the spoilers begin because I have a few things to say about this, both thinking about things other people have said and how I feel about those things, which are going to be deeply connected to some issues about the movie that would reveal a lot about the plot. So I'll make sure to give you a heads up on when the spoilers will begin. So the first part right here is spoiler free. The next part will have some spoilers in it. So anyway, um, like I said, I've been really jonesing to see this movie because I'm a big fan of Ghost in the Shell. I've said this in previous videos about the movie itself when the whole whitewashing issue came up. That will be talked about later. And I'm a big fan of the manga series, the anime series, and the movies. And I've loved it ever since I first saw the original Ghost in the Shell movie back in 1995. I have several types of manga, the American release and the uncut release of the manga. I have several other additional manga attachments. I have the the standalone complex second gig. So, and I've seen a rise. So and I've seen all the movies. So I'm a big fan of the series. I know a lot about the characters and whole the whole Ghost in the Shell experience, I guess you could say. So for those of you not in the know or have been hiding under a rock for the last few months, Ghost in the Shell is based off a manga series by Masamune Shirow, which takes place in a future where cybernetic technology has advanced to the point where you can completely cyberneticize your own body to the point where your entire body is machine, and the only thing about you that is still biological is just your brain. And that is where the main character comes in, Major Motoko Kusanagi, of an anti-terrorist police group called Section 9. And they deal, of course, with a lot of political crimes, terrorist crimes, that kind of stuff. They usually endanger, threaten the safety of the nation, or even other nations themselves. So the cases that they pursue tend to get pretty complex, and then you throw in evolutions of technology in a future where cybernetic technology and hacking a person's brain and stuff like that are so commonplace. It gives a new depth to the cases that they solve. Now, the there is a particular story arc in the original manga which kind of ends with the Major merging with an AI that was born basically in the net that was called the Puppeteer because it was able to easily hack into other people's minds to make them do different things to manipulate various types of stock markets and political figures for its own personal gain. But it decided to merge with the Major and, as it said, bear their very offspring into the net. So the Major accepted. And so the Major no longer became the Major, but more of a synthesis between herself and the Puppeteer. Not only that, but there are also other now new intelligences on the web that are born from that merging. And that's how the manga kind of ends. Well, the movie here more takes a cue from the actual original movie, which gave a curtailed version of the original manga, the whole Puppeteer story. Though it does throw some curveballs and doesn't use exactly that plot. It does also borrow elements from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex involving a particular terrorist called Kuze. Now, in the movie, what it is that the Major is no longer Motoko Kusanagi, but somebody named Mira Killian, who is rescued by a corporation called Hanka Robotics and put into a cyborg body, the most advanced cyborg body, so advanced that it's only her brain that is in a robotic body, making her much stronger and faster than any human who's ever lived, but also making her feel very, very alone. And the case surrounding Section 9 is about this terrorist named Kuze, who has been hacking into other people's minds and trying to bring down Hanka Robotics for his own personal reasons. And the story involves the Major and members of Section 9, and for those of you who, of course, are familiar with the manga, you have your characters like Togusa and Aramaki and Bato and Ishikawa and Saito and Boma and Patsu. All members of Section 9 working with the Major to solve this crime, which you find out has much deeper ramifications than could be expected. But rather than have this be some big political issue, it ends up hitting home. It ends up involving the Major personally. Just the same as the original 1995 Ghost in the Shell movie was a personal tale about the Major, this one also gets into a personal tale about the Major, but does some things differently than, of course, the original manga and anime. Now, without getting into heavy spoiler territory, the differences between the movie, this movie, and the 1995 movie, how would I want to put this? They range from subtle to fairly wide divergences. All, of course, if you ask me, for the sake of taking, literary license, taking it, not editorial, like creative license, that's the word I'm looking for, to make something truly unique. And so, basically, if you want to get down to brass tacks, did I like it? Absolutely. I actually loved it. Now, I've seen reviews, I've seen people talk about this movie. Now, the whole whitewashing issue aside, which I will talk about later, of course, the movie, of course, is not without its problems. One of the big problems that I have with it is that it woefully underused the other members of Section 9. The story particularly focused the heaviest on members of the members of Section 9 that focused heaviest on, were Bato, the Major, Aramaki, who is the head of Section 9, and some members of Hanka Robotics, and Kuze. Really, only two members of Hanka Robotics really come to mind. Cutter, who seems to be the leader, and the other Dr. Lei, if memory serves, that is her name. And that's pretty much it. The other members of Section 9, though they were used in the story, got very little screen time and very little voice time at all. They served their purposes, but they seem to be more plot devices than people. And I kind of had a problem with that, because even in the original movie, the other members of Section 9 really didn't have much of a big part to play. The only ones who you really saw were Togusa and Bato. Now, it's of course natural that Bato would be somebody who was given a big spotlight, because Bato and the Major work so closely together with each other, and there's a lot of good chemistry between them. Bato is a very close friend and good friend of the Major, even though he has a hard time understanding her, even in the manga and anime. But he's still a genuinely likable person and really tough and handy member of the team. And of course, Togusa, who was the one member of the team who was almost completely human, except for like a little bit of brain augmentation. And so you get kind of his side from, just the normie type person. But in the movie, they really don't say much with Togusa except a few lines about how he likes having his own body and not being cyberneticized. Whereas Bato, at first starting off with regular eyes, does get those classic tiny little eye shade thingies that he has in the manga and the anime. As for the characters and how they did their performances, they did great. Scarlett Johansson, some people don't like her as an actress, and I really don't understand why. I've seen her as the Black Widow in the Avengers movies and other Marvel movies that she's been in, and I've seen her in Lucy, and I thought she did a bang-up job. She really does a good job in action flicks, and with this one where she has to tone it down and be a very introspective character, I think she did a wonderful job playing the Major. The Major can be, just kicking his major behind one moment, and yet have those moments of soft introspection the next. And she pulled it off really, really well because of the, with the philosophical things that were in the movie. Now, that does lead me to another point. They had a good amount of the philosophical issues in the movie, not quite as heavy as the manga and the anime put it on, but it did for those who really like that aspect of Ghost in the Shell, which is a big, heavy aspect in the manga and anime. They do have those moments of quiet philosophical contemplation in a few small moments. Let me see. The only other issue that I had with the movie, now some people said that the villain was just not very good at all. I beg to differ. I think the guy who played Kuze, Michael Pitt, did a good job with what he was given, and it was really pretty cool too, with that weird stutter that he had, because it was like a body that just wasn't working well. Now there's a reason for that, and I don't want to spoil that for you right now. But otherwise, you can see that he was somebody with plans and had a good reason to do what he did, regardless of the people that he hurt. But it didn't. I guess the problem was he didn't give him quite enough depth for him to be a very memorable villain, unfortunately, and that's kind of where the movie fell flat. So those are really the two big issues that I had with the movie. Now, going on to that, like the stuff that I really loved about it, well, I liked the acting. What is his name right off the top of my head? Pilo Asbeck, playing Bateau, did a great job as Bateau. He was the one who was the foil for the Major, and the Major being the foil for him. He did a great job interacting with Scarlett Johansson as the Major. Takeshi Kitano playing Aramaki, the head of Section 9, did a surprisingly good performance, despite how low-key he was and maybe didn't get as much screen time as I would have liked. But he had some moments in that movie where he really shined, and the cool thing about him was that he spoke only Japanese throughout the entire movie, and everyone would respond to him in English. So that was actually kind of interesting. Let me see, and like I said, with the other members of Section 9, despite them not getting much time, I think the real insult to me was not using the guy who played Ishikawa, because Ishikawa was the major hacker, and yet it was only the Major doing a lot of the mind hacking parts. Go figure. I guess it's just one of those things. But those who played their roles and the movie focused on did a great job with those roles they gave. The movie has a much more low-key feel to it than a lot of audience members would expect. I like that about the movie, because Ghost in the Shell has a tendency to swing from moments of quiet contemplation to moments of, white-knuckle action. Another thing about the movies that I really loved, of course, was the visual effects aspect. This movie was incredibly detailed and full of some of the most beautiful visual effects I have seen since Tron Legacy. And, of course, Weta Workshop being the guys who did the visual effects, they don't do anything halfway. So you tell especially like the Robo-Geishas and a lot of the moments where the Major was going into computer systems, and just the holograms on the buildings and the scope of the city was just beautiful and amazing. It gave the gritty look to the times where it needed that gritty look, where there's this one scene where Section 9 goes into this, I guess you could call it a chop shop for people, and it gets downright gruesome seeing what they're doing with just, I guess, home brewed cybernetic implants. It's pretty gruesome and hard hitting. So it gives a good delivery of the cyberpunk milieu, I guess you could call it. Those are the things that I really liked about the movie. Now, just on the whole, I on an intellectual level, the people who had the more legit complaints about the movie, about it being slow-paced, about, maybe some of the performances were just underwhelming, the issues about the characters that were underused, and Kuze not being an interesting villain, those people kind of did lean very heavily on those negative elements and gave this movie slightly negative reviews. On an intellectual level, I totally understand that. And I don't have a problem with that. If they didn't like the movie, didn't like it. I personally loved it. Those issues were not deal breakers for me because I found so much to like about this movie. And, on the whole, I mean, I personally gave it between a 6.5 and 7 out of 10. I personally recommend anyone to go see it. It's not going to be maybe as good as you'd hope it to be, but it was still very good and highly entertaining. I loved it. And that's pretty much what I have to say about the movie. Now, going into spoiler territory, people, I want to go into some issues that some people have with the movies that I took slight umbrage with. So once again, I'm going into spoiler territory. If you want to stop here, if you have not seen the movie, go ahead and stop, and come back later and watch the rest. Okay. This really kind of hit off with two people who I had seen talk about the movie. One is a person who is a fellow reviewer on YouTube. Calls himself Johnny Blues. People, Johnny Blues is an awesome guy. Please do not go to him and give him any trouble. I know I don't get that many people on my channel, but I just don't want to cause a mess between me and him. I already talked to him about that, or at least messaged him on Facebook about the whole issue. I'm just saying what he said. Not to make him look bad. I'm just saying what he said, and I want to address what I had said about it. And it wasn't just him. It was also another person who I'll talk about in a second. Anyway, he had an issue, of course, with one of the big reveals of the movie. And that is, of course, if you've seen it, the fact that the Major was originally a Japanese girl named Motoko. And, of course, for all those who've seen the movie, Motoko Kusanagi is the Major's quote-unquote name throughout the series, and the movies, and the anime, and the manga. So he took particular issue with that because he was saying that was, and it wasn't just him, it was another person, I'll talk about that in a moment. He felt really upset about it because as a fan of the anime, and he did have some issues about the alleged whitewashing of the movie. Now, before I go any further, for those of you who have not seen my video, how I feel about that whole allegation of whitewashing is I believe it is 100% bull. Here's the reason why. First of all, Motoko Kusanagi is not the Major's real name. They say this in the very first manga. Mamoru Oshii, the creator of the original Ghost in the Shell movie, has gone on record as saying that her body is a generic body. It is not Japanese. Her nationality, of course, is her true nationality and ethnicity are never revealed in the movies. So for all we know, she could be from Europe or Australia or any other place in the world. She might even be an Indian. Who knows? And like I said, the fact that Mamoru Oshii himself came forward and addressed this whole whitewashing issue and kind of admonished these people who were hung up on that. Because these people who were hung up on the whole whitewashing thing are people who did not understand the source material at all. So, not only that, but let me get into what the other person was saying about this. Another very well-known movie reviewer, who I happen to like a lot normally, Movie Bob, had addressed this after his review of Ghost in the Shell. Now, make a long story short about his reviews, he didn't like it. And I can understand that, but when he hopped on to the whole issues about what they did with the Major's character involving this Motoko character, he went on this tirade on how it was basically a slap in the face to the Japanese because he was getting on the whitewashing train. He thought that was a particular slap in the face to the Japanese and to the movie and to fans, and I got pretty indignant about that because, of course, for two reasons. Not only that, the whole whitewashing thing to me was BS, but here's something interesting. In the movie, the original 1995 movie, the Major makes an interesting statement that basically is I'm almost certain something that the writers for the script for this movie went took and ran with modifications to make it the basis of the plot for this movie. She mentions saying that she can't help but wonder if she said that she talked about her and my brain's suddenly locking on this. She talked about being paranoid about her origins, that she had feelings as if she had died a long time ago and her brain was placed in this body, or that she never existed at all. So when you take that and see the plot that was delivered for this particular rendition of Ghost in the Shell, I see this as the writers taking that particular paranoid supposition and saying, well, what if that's really what happened? What if the Major was a real person who died a long time ago and they put her brain in that body? So I think that was an interesting twist on the story and really worked. This was not trying to insult or belittle the fans or try to, be callous about the whole issue of whitewashing. Because, of course, like I said, the whole issue of whitewashing is bull. And then this, when you realize what this entails, is really a stroke of genius if the writers took that particular part of that movie and did run with it. It was a stroke of genius. So, in this movie, what if the real Motoko Kusanagi had died and her brain placed into the cyborg body? And of course, for those of you who've watched the movie, know how the rest of it plays out, with her being, a tool of Hanka Robotics, where they took these runaway kids, kidnapped them, and basically started using them for scientific experimentation. It gives the movie, the story, a much darker edge. And so that showed me that Movie Bob did not do his research before reviewing this movie. And I expected better from somebody who was supposed to be professional. And so that kind of upset me. And other people, like I said, have made this issue too. I mean, pretty much, the Johnny Blues guy who I talked to, he made that mention. Now, I'm not going to be as hard on him as I am with Movie Bob, because he and I are basically just laymen, and I can understand if he maybe missed that whole issue, but Movie Bob never even knew. And I'm sorry, in this case, ignorance is not going to be an excuse, because he's just, when you watch the review, you see that he is overlapping his own personal, political, maybe not political, but socio-political opinions onto this piece, and ignoring anything to the contrary, ignoring all what Mamoru Oshii said, ignoring what the whole deal is in the actual manga and anime, and then also not realizing this whole deal about, where the direction the movie is being taken, being an actual exploration of another possibility. And I think it's just a shame. Now, I don't hate Movie Bob. I still watch his stuff, but I do realize that he does have a tendency to get political or on a fanboy rant. And, well, he admitted that he never watched anything that Ghost in the Shell, so it's not a fanboy rant. But I think it's something that could have been avoided if he just done a little bit of his homework. That is all. And Bluesman, if you're watching, like I said, I have nothing against you, man. I mean, if you didn't like the movie, you didn't like the movie. I just... I hope that, you might have wanted to debate me on this, but, well, c'est la vie. Anyway, so that is all I have to say about it. I love the movie, and I really think the naysayers in this movie really don't know what they're talking about. Now, like I said, there are intellectual reasons for not liking this movie, and if you didn't like it, well, c'est la vie. But, just don't bring up the whole whitewashing thing, because that's been shown time and time again to be utter bull. And that's all I have to say about that, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Comment, rate, subscribe. And, if you want to comment, like I said, leave a comment down in the doobly-doo. Trolls, of course, will be eliminated. So keep it civil, as always. So, and thank you once again, everyone, for listening. I will be back very soon because I have a lot of big announcements coming your way, and a few more reviews of books. So look forward to that. And so I'm kind of back now, guys. I know it's been a while, and definitely back. So until next time, everyone, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon. And as always, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.